Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gangana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. Pay very close attention to these teachings. They are from a work of Adi Sankaracharya, Vivekachudamani, and it is Advaita Vedanta. So these are the teachings that you find in the scriptures. They are according to the scriptures. So pay very attention to these teachings. Listen very carefully to these teachings. Then you should reflect upon them, reflecting a lot upon these teachings, and then meditate upon these teachings so that they may bear fruit in your heart. Moving on, verse 140. When the pure effulgent Atman is covered by tamas, ignorance, when that light of the pure Atman is taken away, being deluded, the fool takes the body as the self. Then comes desire and anger. So it takes the body as the self, so it takes the needs of the body, mind, as his own needs, as real needs. So then comes desire and anger. Anger comes from the non-gratification of desire, or by something that is obstructing this gratification. Then rajas, whose name is scattering. This decentralizing force comes and brings pain. So from this tamas, rajas rises and makes you invest in infinite directions, in the directions of the sense pleasures, with the results that come from them. So when the Atman is situated thus, the fool is in the mouth of the great crocodile. Well, the crocodiles are famous to have a tremendous bite. When they hold on, they don't let go. So as this tamas is there, and this rajas, the grip of delusion is unbreakable. So the fool is in the mouth of the great crocodile of delusion in the shoreless ocean of the world, where the objects of senses are the water that is full of poison. First sunk, then raised, he is full of ignorance and suffers again. So in the shoreless ocean of the world, so this delusion is compared to a shoreless ocean, an unending ocean. It doesn't matter where you swim, in which direction, you will not reach the shore. It's unending. So it is delusion as you're in the influence of tamas and rajas, where the objects of senses are the water that is full of poison. Poison brings death. So the objects of senses are compared to poison. If you swim in them, you die. First sunk, then raised, he is full of ignorance and suffers again. The sun creates the cloud, and then the cloud hides the sun. So egotism takes rise from the Atman and then veils it. And as in the day when the clouds hide the sun and it becomes dark, there comes a heavy cold wind and makes it worse. So to the fool who is covered by tamas, this scattering quality rajas becomes the cause of various sufferings. So first the dark clouds, which represent tamas, and then this cold wind that makes all worse, which is the quality of rajas. With these two forces, rajas and tamas, comes the bondage to the individual, deluded by which, thinking the body to be the self, the fool wanders. So as he is in the influence of the gunas, he will wander again and again, and it doesn't matter because it is a tight grip. Taking this world as a tree, the seed of this tree of the world is tamas. The idea of the self as the body is the sprout of that tree. Attachment is the twig, and actions the water. The pranas, the body, the trunk. The different senses are the different branches. The objects of senses are the flowers. Pain is the fruit, and the human soul is the bird that lives on this tree and eats the fruits of various sufferings from different kinds of actions. So it's a good analogy. And here, the soul as the bird. So everything pertains to the bird of delusion, to the tree of delusion. The bird is there, is eating the fruits, but he is not a part of the tree. He is separated from it. He is just visiting, but he is not part of the tree. Nature of bondage. Ignorance is the root of this bondage, natural but beginningless and endless. Birth, death, sickness, disease, old age, pain, ignorance creates these for the enjoyer. So ignorance of who you really are is the root of this bondage. Natural but beginningless and endless. Well, if it's like a mirage, it doesn't exist, or as the snake in the rope. So, and what doesn't exist has no beginning, so it will not have an ending. Birth, death, sickness, disease, old age, pain, ignorance creates these for the enjoyer. The enjoyer, the ego, creates out of thin air because none of this really exists. Neither by weapons, by any scripture, by fire, nor by water can this tree be hewed down, nor by millions of different kinds of works can it be hewed down. Only the great sword of discrimination can cut down this Maya, and that sword should be whetted by the grace of the Lord. So only through discrimination, and again, this discrimination between what is real and what is not real, what is the self and what is not the self, only this can cut down this illusion, this Maya, nothing else. And that sword should be whetted by the grace of the Lord. It is through grace that discrimination unfolds and grows to the height which is needed to cut down this tree of illusion. Because without discrimination, it seems very, very easy, theoretically, to know what's real and what's not real. What is the self and what is not the self? But that discrimination with time, with work, with a lot of practice, reveals that whatever you thought previously to be discrimination is still very far from it. From faith in the scriptures comes fidelity to one's own duty. And by the performance of that duty comes the purification of the heart. There only is the knowledge of the Supreme Self, and by that knowledge comes the destruction of the tree of the world, root and all. So from the faith in the scriptures comes fidelity to one's own duty. So from the faith in the scriptures, in the teachings of the scriptures, in the end result of this journey towards liberation, comes fidelity to one's own duty, that is, quest for liberation, fidelity to the quest for liberation. And from that duty comes purification of the heart, because you will take the appropriate steps and measures into that direction. There only is the knowledge of the Supreme Self, and by that knowledge comes the destruction of the tree of the world, root and all. So it is only there that you experience yourself, and only that direct experience can cut down that tree of illusion. Being enveloped by different sheets, the Atman does not manifest. As water is covered by the moss which rises from it, so the Atman is covered by these 5 sheets. But if you remove the moss, you can see the pure water completely, and it removes the pain of thirst and gives immediate relief to the individual. So these sheets are obstructing the clear vision, the direct experience of who you really are. But as you remove it, the eye is still pure there, unchanged, and the thirst of the seeker of truth, the one who is after self-realization, is quenched by the removal of these sheets. So if these 5 sheets are taken away, the Atman will manifest itself, pure, eternal bliss, unchangeable, direct, and self-luminous. So again, like the dark clouds that are clouding the sun, that's just in the perspective of the ignorant, the one who is below the clouds. Because if he has the opportunity to see above the clouds, he will see that the sun is still shining in its purest form, nothing has changed. Therefore, the wise man should discriminate between the self and the non-self in order to be free. For by discrimination alone and knowing oneself, knowing one's own intelligence, knowledge, and bliss, he becomes ever peaceful. And by discrimination alone, because only by discrimination you can identify the non-self and abstract from it, and what is the self, and focusing on it. And here makes a reference, knowing one's own intelligence, knowledge, and bliss. That is the nature of the self, which is called Sat Chit Ananda. And then he becomes ever peaceful, because that's the nature of the self. As the blade of grass is separated from its sheath, you must separate the seer from the seen and reduce everything to the Atman, directly, not by imagination. And one who dwells in that Atman is free. So, you must separate the seer from the seen, because only the seer is, the seen is not real. So whatever is seen, it is the non-self. And reduce everything to Atman, not by imagination. So what does this mean, not by imagination? Not just as mental concepts and imagining. You must observe things and act upon them in the right way. So when you observe you're not the body, you cannot be saying, oh, I'm not the body, imagining I'm not the body, but then taking care of the body with all worries put into it. So this becomes an exercise of imagination only, and it doesn't work. And the one who dwells in that Atman is free, because only the one who is not dwelling who isn't dwelling in the non-Atman can dwell in the Atman. As long as you are dwelling in that which you're not, you will not be tuning in, abiding in, tuning in, coming closer to the self, because you're still immersed in the non-self. And the one who dwells in that Atman is free. So to dwell in the Atman, that is the by Samadhi, for example, and only that breaks delusion, nothing else. But again, as long as you are focusing in the non-self, you will not experience directly the self. This body is the first sheet. It is a transformation of food. It lives by food and dies without it. Therefore, its name is the food sheet, Annamaya Kosha. What is this body? It is skin, bone, flesh, marrow, etc. This cannot be the Atman, which is pure and unchangeable. Before birth, after death, the Atman, remains, whereas at every moment the body undergoes change. It is not one, but three. Therefore, it cannot be the Atman, which is one without a second. So it makes a clear statement here that this physical body is just a product of food, and it is changing all the time. And it is a product of the three gunas. Or even we could say, let's keep it simple. And the Atman, it is pure and unchangeable. So this cannot be the Atman. It is insentient as a jar, and how different are its aspects. It is the object of your senses and cannot be the enjoyer of them. It cannot be the Atman, the enjoyer of all changes. So a body, when it is devoid of life, it is a corpse. Immovable, just a pile of flesh which is decomposing. So the life of the body, that which gives life and presence, when it's not there, it's just a pile of flesh. Insatiate as a jar, as they are putting it here. It is the object of your senses and it cannot be the enjoyer of them, because you can perceive that body by your senses. So if it is perceived, it is not the perceiver, so it is not you. The body has hands and feet, etc., whereas the Atman is spirit. The body lives but undergoes change. The Atman is the real life, whereas the body's life is borrowed. The body can be controlled, but the Atman is always the controller. So control can be exerted on the body, but who is exerting that control? And the Atman is the real life. It is the sense of I, the identity is from the Atman, not from the body. This body has attributes and actions, but the Atman is without any attribute and beyond all actions. The Atman is the witness of everything, whereas this body cannot be the witness of anything. The body cannot live without food, and food is the cause of the body. So it has a cause, the Atman has no cause, but it is self-existent. This heap of bones, smeared with blood and flesh, filled with impure things, very, very impure, how can it be the knower of bliss? The self is separated from it. This outlook is for the seeker to gain more and more distance from the body, from the identification with the body. And as this body grows, evolves by food, cannot be the Atman, which is ever changing. It never changes. The ignorant man thinks he is the body. The learned man thinks, I am the jiva. The sentient in this body, but the sage who is full of discrimination and knowledge thinks that he is always the Atman. So the ignorant and the learned, the only difference is that the learned one has more concepts about his own delusion, but delusion is the same. So one thinks he is the body, the other thinks he is the soul incarnated. Both are wrong. Both are wrong. But the sage, who is full of discrimination of who he is and who he isn't, and knowledge, that means direct experience, thinks that he is always the Atman, the ever-changing Atman. Therefore, O fool, thou whose intellect is darkened by tamas, give up the idea of the self as this body, this heap of skin, bone, etc., and make your idea of the self in the self of all. The soul of all souls, Brahman, the changeless one, be steadfast in the idea of your own self and have eternal bliss. So, O fool, fool is the one who doesn't know, whose eyes are clouded by tamas, by ignorance. So, give up this idea of the self as the body and make your idea of the self in the self of all. Elevate your sense of identity to the self of all and not just this body. The soul of all souls, not the soul of this body, not the jiva, but the soul of all souls. Brahman, the changeless one, be steadfast in the idea of your own self. That means make your mind one-pointed. Hold on to the self, to the soul of all souls, and have eternal bliss. Realize who you really are. As long as one does not give up this idea of the self as the body, there is no hope of liberation for him, though he may be the knower of all philosophies and logic. Well, as long as you don't give the necessary steps, nothing changes. So it's not just giving up the idea of the self as the body. You start by here, but this is what takes you to the full realization of who you really are, when you're not mistaking yourself or being convinced by your actions that you are the body. As long as you identify with the body, there is no hope of liberation. Even though you may be the knower of all philosophies and logic. So it doesn't matter, because as long as there's identification with the body, the understanding of philosophies will be conditioned by that. And so will logic be conditioned by that. Because as you move convinced you are the body, you will have to justify its existence, and it needs purpose, it needs a lot of things. So the logic that you will have will be, it is always conditioned by your attachments, by the vision you have on yourself. So it doesn't matter if you're the knower of all philosophies. It makes no difference. So giving up this idea of the body by discrimination, that is the way. Do not take this body as the self, just as you do not take the shadow or reflection as the real object, or the body that you see in a dream or imagination to be yourself. So this is another clear example as to how you should look at this body. As a shadow. A shadow, you don't mistake a shadow by the real object. And also when you wake up, whatever that means, and you remember the body you had in that dream, you don't take it to be yourself. So you should look at this body as you look at those bodies. This knowledge of the self as the body, this wicked desire, which is unreal, that I am the body, this is the root of birth and different sufferings. So this confusion makes you wander again and again through endless circumstances and gives birth to many different sufferings that comes from this illusion that you are the body, and which is unreal, the product of imagination. Let's call it imagination for now.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.